Blue skies means fun days. Helping skydivers with tips and techniques about safety, training and fun jumping from those who know. Coaches and coaching. I get a lot of questions about should you use a coach or just learn stuff from YouTube. Hi and welcome to Blue Skies Fun Days. I'm a B-Rel coach, but that's all. To explore this coaching subject, I spoke to some colleagues with Arizona's Axis Flight School who are full-time coaches. They spend their time teaching people how to fly cleanly, smoothly and safely.
In my opinion, I think the earlier you get coaching, the better. And again, it should be professional coaching.
Everybody should get a coach. It's never too early to get coaching, and it's never too late.
Most skydivers were wanting to be helpful, they're friendly, they're kind with, forthcoming with information, but it may not always be appropriate to the person that they're giving it to.
I believe all of us can expand our knowledge, and one of the things that, in my opinion, a professional level coach should offer is going to be an evolution of how something is taught.
I think that's where the professional coaching is maybe a little bit more valuable in the sense of like, hey, I'm at this point and I'm trying to get to here, and somebody who has a lot of experience with teaching that can actually carve out a path for them to follow. And I think that's going to be most beneficial early on, because that way you can also avoid maybe a lot of pitfalls, either way, be it safety oriented or also just from a technique standpoint.
Remember to support this channel by subscribing, ringing the bell and telling your friends. Packing mats can be a great place to get a few tips, but is it the place to get quality coaching?
Many people that first start skydiving just Google what's the closest drop zone to me. And not all drop zones are created equal, not all schools are created equal. And so what ends up happening is people will just go to the drop zone closest to them. And sometimes that can be fantastic, and sometimes they can have a less than ideal experience. And the problem is they think that that's how it is everywhere, and that is not the case. What we tell people is, much like if you wanted to learn to surf, you have to travel to a coast where there's an ocean. If you want to learn to ski, you have to travel to a place where there has mountains and fresh powder. And just like with skydiving, if you want to expand your skills, you may have to travel to other drop zones, even if there's a drop zone right down the street from your house. That may or may not be adequate for you and your needs or where it is that you want to go in this sport. Everybody should get coaching. It's never too early or too late. The information that you take in should evolve with you. A lot of the type of coaching that Nick and I do is fixing bad habits. And so sometimes the sooner we could get our hands on someone, if they wanted to do something specific, actually I think the cleaner, if you will, their education, or the smoother their education would be. But a lot of times when we get students, we're actually having to dispel myths and fix bad habits. So the sooner you can kind of get a coach, and a coach that specializes in the discipline that you want, certainly can't hurt.
We see a lot of people that are, for example, trying to work on sit flying, for example. We see a lot of sometimes habits they've developed that we usually end up spending more time breaking, and then so that we can advance from there.
I would caution people seeking out coaches. I always think that professional level coaches, it should be obvious. Many people, we call it packing mat coaching, where someone may have more experience than them, but may not necessarily be a professional level coach. I don't really think that there's a algorithm of when it's time to get someone specialized. If that's the discipline that you want to do, seek it out right away, and a lot of times they'll put you on the right path.
Okay, so we definitely need a coach. How do we go about finding one that will suit our needs?
How to select a coach? Man, it's a buyer beware market.
If you're new to the sport, and let's say you just got your license and you want to select a coach for yourself, I think the big thing is that there's the convenience factor of if you're jumping at the drop zone that's just down the road or a couple hours away from you, and they might have somebody who's experienced there who might be able to help with some things, but you're going to find that depending on where you jump, you might be kind of limited, right? Because there might be some instructors that have some experience, but it might not be in a very specific sport like four-way or VFS. And then you also might be limited to the types of activities you can do at that particular drop zone. Like if I wanted to become an 8-way competitor, I'm not going to be doing that out of a Cessna. Right? We need to sometimes take the time to travel somewhere to get those things done. If I wanted to learn a particular sport, I may have to travel to that environment that allows me to do that, right? I'm not going to learn to surf in Arizona. It's just not going to happen.
Something that also needs to be remembered is in many cases, you're also a customer. And you have to make sure that you feel satisfied with the transaction of I am giving this person money and I need to be satisfied with the product that I get back.
You can certainly take advantage of probably a lot of the local coaches that you have available to you, especially if it's kind of more almost like in a load organizing type format. But again, if you want to really have somebody that is dedicated to you and is invested in your journey, then I would say hire a professional coach right away. Because again, going back to load organizing, you might go to the drop zone and there might be a highly knowledgeable, skilled, and maybe affable person that you can go and work with. But before you know it, that 2-way just turned into a 5-way, and you kind of get lost in the shuffle. That's what professional coaching is. Again, it's the opposite of that. It's like no matter what happens on the load or whatever, like I am dedicated to this individual and their journey and making them better, and all of my attention is focused on them. So again, it's a difference in experience is what you're essentially paying for.
How to select a coach. As long as you feel like you are learning, in my opinion, as long as you feel like you're having a good time, and as long as you still feel like it's worth the money, then that's good.
I've always found different coaches have different personalities, and some I get on well with, and some just don't seem to speak my version of English.
I can't necessarily speak much on emotional compatibility. I'm not a psychologist by any means, right? But I do know that when I'm working with somebody, I can see like, hey, are we gelling? Like, is this working well? That's definitely one thing. The other thing I think that's really important is to see tangible evidence of progress. So if I'm working with a 4-way team and they want to go from X average to this average, then we should be able to mark that progress. And I think that's obviously very important.
The student-coach or student-instructor relationship isn't very important, not just in skydiving, but you see that in aviation or you see that anywhere. Both people have to be able to work with one another. Someone has to be able to teach somebody and someone has to be able to learn from them. Compatibility is important, and I think a lot of times students forget that they actually should take a little bit more of their education into their own hands.
I think if you're hiring somebody for a specific service, they need to be delivering on that service, and that's what we should see take place, is that tangible evidence. And so if that's happening, great, that might be all it takes. But if you're somebody who likes to be a little bit more social or wants to have those extra, maybe outside those activities and you're kind of more looking for like a friendship more than just a business transaction, again, that's going to be unique to everybody.
It's important for a coach or an instructor to tell a student what they need. But there is a certain way that needs to be said or can be conveyed. And I think a lot of times students forget that they themselves are customers. And so you may be learning to skydive or you may be going to a coach and working on something, but if you're not happy, if you're not having fun, if it's not enjoyable, those are all things that they should be. I'm not saying that the learning process is always tulips and puppy dogs and it's never hard and never frustrating, but you should always be treated, in my opinion, with respect, and you have to understand that it is a business transaction, and you should, as a customer, be satisfied with that transaction. And if you're not, you may need to seek going somewhere else or getting a new coach or instructor.
If you have a specific goal and you need a coach for a specific discipline, how do you chase one up? And when should you start?
I think skydiving is a really unique sport because unlike other activities, for example, be it soccer or football or baseball, whatever you pick, your chances are when you're starting out, you're not going to be able to hire a world champion at that level. If you had the ability to travel to, let's say, somebody who is a very well accomplished person in that discipline that you're wanting to get better at, it is amazing to be able to have that as a resource.
There's a myth out there that just because many coaches coach something specialized or at a high level, that you have to earn getting to that level. And I disagree with that.
While there are a lot of coaches out there, again, I would choose one that is specific to your needs and has essentially the resume and the reputation that you're looking for.
If you have a specific discipline that you want to go after, let's say crew, the sooner you can find a crew coach, probably the better. If you want to do four-way, find a four-way coach, and the best coach that you can find is where you should, in my opinion, go. I also encourage people to get a variation of coaches because many coaches say the same thing in different ways, or sometimes personalities work, but also the more varied your coaching is, who knows what you might pick up from that or learn from that. I think there's sometimes a myth that in order to get to a top level coach, your performance has to be a certain level, and I don't think that's always necessarily the case. There's no reason that you can't start getting coaching from someone right away. But it also depends on the coach. Maybe some of those coaches don't teach the most basic.
In my opinion, I think the earlier you get coaching, the better. And again, it should be professional coaching.
Everybody should get a coach. It's never too early to get coaching, it's never too late.
Thank you very much, Nik Daniels and Brianne Thompson. Apart from being good friends for almost a decade, I'm sure I can safely say that their coaching and specific insights are responsible for a few thousand of the points that I've turned over the last 1,500 jumps. Anyway, I hope this has answered some of your questions on using coaches. See you next time on Blue Skies Fun Days. For more tips and techniques, click subscribe.